Good evening. Today is Thursday, September 3rd, 2020. I now call this Board of Education for Fairfield City School District meeting to order. And Mrs. Lane, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Begley?
Here.
Mr. Birding?
Present?
Mrs. Gundrum?
Here.
Mrs. O'Neill?
Here.
Mrs. Shorter?
Here.
Mrs. Shorter, will you lead us in the pledge, please?
My pleasure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mrs. Shorter. So Superintendent Billy Smith and Board Member Carrie O'Neill are joining remotely. And so we'll open up this work session for presentations and resolutions, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Birding. Mr. Birding, members of the board, we do have one presentation scheduled this evening. At this time, I'll turn it over to Matt Crapo. He will be providing us with an overview of the open enrollment program in our school district.
All right, well, thank you guys, board members, for allowing me to come today to talk about open enrollment. I was approached this summer to gather data about the enrollment process, making sure what we're doing is right, right for this school district, and right for the kids. When I started this process, I quickly came to realize I need to say thank you to a couple people. The curriculum department, enrollment department, treasury department, student services, to get this data together, to make it meaningful and to see where we're at in the enrollment process. And so thank you. But then personally, I'd like to say thank you to you guys, the community, the coaches, the teachers, the staff, the kids, because when I sat down and I got to look at these numbers of open enrollment students, to call it humbling was an experience because I got to see how many students and families were willing to every year apply for open enrollment, knowing that they could possibly be denied, but they want to be part of a culture. They want to be part of something successful. And so looking at these numbers, it really got me thinking about how many people want to be part of the Fairfield City School District, and I wanted to personally say thank you for allowing me to be part of that, so thank you. So open enrollment is guided by a couple board policies in which we review to make sure that the students that apply are meeting the criteria and that we're being fair to everybody in the process. So to review a couple of these in the first slide. First of all, we cannot increase staffing due to open enrollment. We want to make sure that we're serving the residents and that we have the staff to make that fair. Next, we want to make sure that we don't exceed class size requirements. So we do, as part of the board policy, have class size requirements for K through 4, and we want to make sure that we stick to that. We want to make sure that students that we accept have not been suspended for 10 consecutive days or expelled. Also, their unexcused absences are less than 12, and that we could revoke their open enrollment based on that data. We also want to make sure that the current students that move out of the district are a priority. So if they have to live in Fairfield City Schools 1 year and then move out, that we make them a priority if they want to remain Fairfield City School District students. This last year, we were a little flexible with the COVID-19 process, so we did extend the deadline to allow more students to apply. When we go into the data, we're going to look at the financial overview today. We're going to look at GPA, attendance, referrals, discipline process, numbers per grade level. But if you look at this data, we go back to 13, 14, on up to the present, with various columns left to right. But if you look at the far right column, it does show us the net money generated. If you look at those years from 13, 14 on up to the present, you'll find that we have generated just over $2.2 million from our open enrollment programming, with an average of $317,000 per year for the programming. This, to me, tells me that many students want to be part of what we have going on here. So that's a big deal personally. If you look at the next slide, we have from 14-15 on up to 19-20. It was a big push of mine in the past to push attendance for kids, because it's my belief that if you're not sitting in a classroom or sitting with an instructor, it's hard to absorb the information. I have highlighted the attendance rate from 14-15 on up to the present for open enrolled students and resident students, and you will find at no point is there ever a full 1% difference between the two. So our open enrolled students not only work to apply, but once they're here, they work to come to school. The demographics page is the next slide. Part of our board policy states that we need to maintain an interest in the demographics, trying to maintain stability. As you go through from 14-15 through 19-20, and I won't go line by line, but you will find a consistency value as we go year to year. We do look at this every year, trying to maintain stability. Our next slide is open enrollment by grade. Again, I'm not going to go year by year, but I do have it for you listed by the number of students per grade that was accepted for open enrollment. The big difference to me is over the course of time, obviously from the first slide, that we have grown in our open enrollment numbers, but those numbers have increased primarily in secondary levels. And you'll find that on the next slide, which shows 18-19 and 19-20 data. The next slide, which is open enrollment GPA. This goes hand in hand with attendance, and while I value attendance because I believe if you're here, we can make you safe, we can feed you, and we can give you an education. GPA, this proves that while the students work hard to become Fairfield City School District students, while they're here, they're working to meet the residents' GPA. As you go across 14-15 on up to 19-20, you can see that the average open enrollment GPA you'll find is 3.148, while the resident GPA is 3.102, which is a difference of 46 thousandths of a point, which means they're working just as hard to earn that GPA. The next piece, as a previous principal, I wish I would have sometimes had all these numbers in front of me. Open enrollment and student discipline. While we look at these numbers from 14-15 on up to the present, I do have on this page the number of referrals and the number of out-of-school suspensions, showing the percentage of students in open enrollment compared to the percentage of students as residents, and beneath showing as a baseline the percentage of open enrollment students. What I was looking for is to make sure that our referral numbers was comparable and in line with the percentage of students of the population. And if you go through this, open enrollment over those years make up 2.89% of our population. Our referrals, open enrollment, make up 2.505, so less than that. And suspensions is 1.465%. So again, far less than that. So again, pushing the drive here, where open enrollment students work hard to be accepted, and once they are accepted, they come to school, they work hard for their GPA, and they're not getting in trouble. So the point of the presentation that I really wanted to push is we look at a lot of numbers every day in the beginning of the school year for all the students who want to be part of this family, want to be part of this culture. And we look at the data that drives this. We want to make sure that we've got the teachers, the staff, the room, and that the students that we're accepting are meeting our expectations. And the data really does drive our decisions. The data here shows that the kids are coming to school, the kids are working for their GPA, and they're not getting in trouble. So at the end, I think it's a good program. So you got any questions?
Any questions from the board?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for your efforts on this, and I think open enrollment is a good thing. You know, we certainly lose students to other districts, and so it's important that we replace those, and in fact, we do better than replace them. We have even more that want to come to our district, and I know that there's families that very much appreciate the ability to come to Fairfield. I've heard those good stories. And I also know that there's a stigma, I've heard it enough that I feel there's a stigma out there with regards to open enrollment. I'm sure that's one of the reasons why you addressed student discipline in your report. And the numbers, of course, don't lie, and they say that that's not a concern. And as you said, it's part of our requirements to even attend as an open enrollment student. So, again, I appreciate your efforts, and I hope that was educational to the people out there watching.
Thank you. As the building principal, I can talk, or the previous principal, I can talk where some of this data I wish I had in front of me. It was eye-opening, and it was nice to see how hard people are working.
Mrs. O'Neill, do you have any questions?
I do not, but thank you for the presentation. It's always, I agree with Mr. Begley. It's good information to be reminded of. And I know that there are some stigmas and beliefs out there that aren't really true. And so when you see those numbers, it helps to know what the truth really is. So thank you for putting that together.
I do have a couple questions. First, is there a waiting list for students to get, if a spot becomes open, that we can move somebody in from open enrollment, or is that?
Open enrollment is fluid, and we do constantly look at this and make sure our numbers are right and appropriate. And I also wanted to add, when we run these numbers, it really depends on the day that we run these numbers, on how many kids versus the total population, as it changes every day of what our population in Fairfield City School District is.
And are families, let's say somebody has a 10th grader that is open enrolled, but they have a 7th grader that there was no room for them, and the 7th grader moves out of the district, are we contacting that family to say, hey, are we giving priorities to families that already have students in our district, or is it's still, there was already several 7th graders in front of that one? There's no right or wrong answer, I'm just curious.
Some of it's addressed in the board policy, where if you've been a previous enrolled student, then we do put priority on that one. If you have another member that is in, we do put priority in that one. But we often rely on the parents to call us and ask us where we're at.
Okay.
And I'd like to make a few comments about those questions. The first question about a waiting list. So typically, there is a window of opportunity for people to apply, and I think in part of the presentation talked about first come, first serve. And that's why we have people that camp out every year, because they want to be in the front. They know that increases their chances. Once that window closes, it pretty much closes for the year. Mr. Crapo talked about, we were flexible this year. We generally are not, because we have to plan appropriately to, we go late into the summer, and that's the hardest thing about open enrollment is we have to wait until the last minute. These families have to wait to hear from us until the last minute, because our residents come first. We have to make sure we have the appropriate staffing to serve our resident students, and then we can contact our open enrollment families. And often they go ahead and start school in another school district, and then we contact them, especially if we had a late start that year. And then we have had families move. But in reality, once the window closes, generally they have to wait until the following year to apply again. Now, for students that move out of the district in the middle of the year, they can apply as a relocation student. And ask for the opportunity to stay for the remainder of the year. And then they would have to go through the entire process the following spring if they would like to, if they have a desire to continue to attend the following year after moving out of the district. And especially, if we have juniors or seniors and they've met all the criteria, we hate to see them, force them to move, and finish up the last year, or sometimes it's 6 months of their senior year in another district. So we work really hard to try to accommodate them. So that information might be helpful.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Crapo, for that great presentation. It's very important information that we have because we do get questions from parents often about open enrollment. And so I'm sure that if we have more questions, we can just email you with those.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.